That's an unstoppable unit. No, I actually was fading in and out of, dozing off for other reasons. So I don't know if they were stopped at any point, but they weren't stopped in the first try. How would you handle McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby, Reinhart, and Makar?
Adam, you stay out of the box. It's that simple. Just don't get a penalty. Don't be silly. Don't even put your team in that position where you have to face that. Willie Nylander got that penalty less than a minute in.
Yeah.
They capitalized right away. It's just way too dangerous, way too potent. Just play nice.
And we actually thought, my thought going in was that we were going to see not an all-star game level of non-defensive give-a-rats, but I thought we would see more of just skating and not a lot of physicality. We saw some physicality last night. I was surprised, pleased, and worried all at the same time.
Yeah, right. Guys getting hurt. You never want to see that. You never want to see that happen. Canada lost Shea Theodore for presumably, well, not only they did, but the Vegas Golden Knights as well. He busted up his hand pretty good after getting hit into the boards by Adrian Kempe.
Yeah.
I believe he's out 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, gosh.
Because of that. So, but yeah, I was. And talking to the players before the game and after the game as well, on both Sweden and Canada, they talked about how there was going to be intensity in this one. When guys got here Sunday and Monday to start practice, there was that energy right out of the gate that was already starting to get felt. And they wanted to, they wanted to compete. They want to win this thing. And this is far from certainly that all-star caliber type of performance. And I got to imagine that later tonight between Finland and the U.S., it's going to have that same level of energy.
Yeah, I know. Seth Jarvis joked after essentially beating the Utah Hockey Club by himself on Saturday. He joked in the post-game interview that he couldn't wait to get to Montreal and run Sebastian Aho from behind, and we all laughed. And I don't think he'll do that, but like somebody else might. I don't think Seth would do it. He'll recognize the number, so he'll probably avoid doing that to Sebastian. Not only are they really good friends, but obviously very important to one another. But I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else did, because it did appear that they meant business last night. I give Sweden tons of credit. They could have went away after the first period. They did not.
Yeah, absolutely. They whatever was said in that dressing room in that first intermission, they came out flying in the second period and really turned this into a legit hockey game. Like, it was all Canada in that first, and then just second period rolled around, and all of a sudden now we've got ourselves a game. And that just continued going into third period, going into overtime. The levels of intensity picked up. It got a lot more sticky. And teammates in the NHL, that's nice.
Right.
Maybe I'll let up a little bit, but I'm not going to tell the other guy to let up either. So, this is, like I said, there's a level of intensity here that came into this one that I thought we weren't going to see. And it's I'm like, myself included, I was surprised to see how intense this game was. And, talking to the players on both Finland and USA today, this morning, most of them caught the game last night, and they have a different appreciation for how fast this game is going to be, but also how intense they're going to need to be right out of the gate in order to secure 3 points in this one.
There was a time where I thought Victor Hedman was going to play the entire game. He only played 27 minutes and 15 seconds last night. But I think there were like 3 straight minutes where he was on the ice, and it just doesn't matter. He is such a horse. Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I asked this of John Forsland yesterday about the Achilles, the one weakness for especially the top 2 teams. Sweden probably has 2 really good scoring lines. They have a great blue line and good goaltending. They clearly miss Jacob Markstrom. Finland looks like they have a very good NHL team that would compete for a Stanley Cup, but probably not what Canada and the U.S. are going to put on the ice, and they miss Miro Heiskanen a lot. But Canada's weakness would be goaltending, right?
I think so. I mean, looking at it on the surface, that's definitely it. Now, I will say that Canada does have the only two goalies in the tournament with the Stanley Cup ring,
right?
In Binnington and Aiden Hill in Vegas, so they got that going for them. And we saw like Jordan Binnington wasn't the greatest by any stretch in the first 60 minutes of this game, but he came up absolutely huge for Canada in overtime.
Right.
And so did Philip Gustafsson for the Swedes as well. But Binnington really stepped up and elevated his game big time in OT. And I mean, there were, I think, two at least clear chances where this should have been over for Sweden, but he stepped up in that one. We don't know yet who's going to go against the United States on Saturday. I've got to imagine that Aiden Hill is going to get the nod, but they haven't said anything yet.
Right.
But if you do look at it on the surface, very deep team from lines 1 through 4. They're going to burn you. Their D-core is solid. Goaltending, if you're picking a deficiency in that, on this team, it's probably going to come in that.
There are maybe some weaknesses on Team USA. I'm not sure. Clearly, without Quinn Hughes, they miss a dynamic guy on the blue line, but they've got plenty of those anyway. Zach Werenski and Adam Fox are still there. Looks like Jacob Slavin may play with Fox, maybe in a top defensive pairing. I don't know. But Connor Hellebuck, for all of his greatness in the regular season, has, let's just say, a checkered past in postseason play. If these are big games, like U.S. at least has backup behind Hellebuck who could step in if he doesn't perform well. What do you expect there?
I mean, I talked to Slavin this morning. I talked to Werenski, Brock Faber as well, the D-core that they've got.
So good.
And yeah, it's stacked. And they all brought up the fact of how much, I don't want to say easier, but more of a relief it is, less pressure to a certain extent it is to play when you've got a guy like Connor Hellebuck in net behind you. And these guys play with great goalies, obviously, in the NHL, but in this tournament, to play with arguably the best goaltender so far this season, they all talked about how much of a pressure alleviator it is knowing that he's behind you. And really, anyway, I mean, Swayman, Ottinger, they're stacked in net. But I think it eliminates the need to have to do a little bit too much when you're playing against some of the best players in the world, because you've got one of the best goaltenders in the world, if not the best right now, stacking the pads. So I think there's a big comfort level. Obviously, he didn't talk because he's starting tonight, but there's a big comfort level from the rest of the group with who they have in net, and that should allow them, to play at a specific level, a specific heightened level up front, not having to worry about what's going on in net.
Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. All right, so you are, for me, one of the best sources when it comes to potential trades as we get closer to the trade deadline. I have seen that, for whatever reason, Mikko Rantanen's name has reappeared on other trade watch boards. I don't see him necessarily on yours. I'm scrolling down through it.
He's not, no.
Good. Why is Mikko Rantanen back on other people's trade boards, Dave?
I'm gonna guess they're looking at the stats and not looking at the overall games that have been played. I'm gonna guess it's partly because maybe we haven't seen much activity in the last week, so we want to spice things up a little bit. I don't think there's much of a desire to move on from him, and I certainly can't imagine, knowing this group, that Tulsky and company have not calculated what it would take to keep him long term, and then pulling the trigger on a trade with that ambiguity tied to it. Like, they know what it's going to take. They felt comfortable enough in the possibility of giving him that. Whatever the potential number is going to be, whatever the potential contract is going to be, in order to keep him there and have it as competitive as any other team in the league. He's got to adjust. Not everybody's going to all of a sudden just automatically shine right out of the gate. It's a totally different system. You're dealing with other athletes that you haven't played with consistently before. You got to give him a little bit of time. But to have a game breaker like Mikko Rantanen on your roster is something that this team hasn't had in quite some time, as you know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that they have any appetite to explore moving him. Even if there's a little bit of hesitancy by the deadline to get him signed, because I don't even think that the trade deadline itself is a deadline in their eyes.
No.
With respect to keeping him and getting him locked up.
No, I think it's probably, when the Stanley Cup is over, and maybe they're lifting it, I don't know. If Rantanen, if it clicks in terms of his production and Carolina's, I think, goaltending, which has been shaky the last few games, if their goaltending gets back to where I think it could be, even with these two, if they don't go out and maybe add another one at the deadline, if these things click, I think they can be in it, or at least get out of the East, because nobody in the East other than Florida, for me, is all that great. Maybe Toronto, if Solars stays healthy, I think they could be really good too. But the thing about it is that it was like they weren't listening to Eric Tulsky when he had his Zoom call. This was not about they weren't trying to sign Mikko Rantanen today. They were trying to create an environment where he would want to be here after the season. And then money's not going to be a problem. They're going to have like $40 million under the salary cap this year. They can pay Mikko Rantanen whatever he wants. And when you think about the cap going up to almost $114 million 3 years from now, like Seth Jarvis's $7.4 million cap hit is going to seem like a rookie deal.
There's a misconception, Adam. There's a misconception out there that Tom Dundon doesn't want to spend money. Like that's right, exactly.
Right.
Like that's the misconception out there on a national scale, Canada, U.S. national scale, broad spectrum. You look at their cap numbers, you look at what they've spent, you look at where they're at, and what they're willing to do here with Mikko Rantanen. That narrative is getting old, and it's already stale. And to be in a position to have this type of player, to give him the money that you're going to start to see, I would think, because it's frustrating for you guys, I imagine, like myself a little bit, so I can imagine you guys. But they're going to give him, exactly like you said, whatever he wants in order to stay. If it all makes sense, they've already pre-calculated where this is going to go.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of him, unless he wakes up and says, no, I only want to play in this particular market or that. That's the only way I see him not being a long-term fit for the Carolina Hurricanes. And you can't analyze that because you're just not going to know until you bring him in. Wait until Game 83 kicks in, regardless of what he does the rest of the regular season. That's why you brought Mikko Rantanen in.
Correct. To
give yourself that edge to push him over the top come playoff time. I think from a trade deadline perspective, the rest of the way, you're definitely going to be. You should be. The rest of the league should be focusing on other players that are out there that are likely to change addresses between now and 3 p.m. Eastern on March 7th.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if I think Carolina will at best add around the margins. I don't think they'll do anything significant unless Pyotr Kochetkov and Frederik Andersen, either one of them comes up injured or the play over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, doesn't improve, and in which case, if they want to get the most out of this season, they're going to need somebody else to at least push one of them. But again, I think they'll just add within the margins. Enjoy Montreal. Enjoy USA Finland tonight. I assume you're headed to Boston after that. We will talk to you down the road, David. I appreciate your time.
I got the full ride. You got it. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period.